Just to start off, Ray, for yourself, how were you drawn to the drums as your instrument of choice?
Watching stuff on TV when I was little, I think. I never actually seen a drum kit in the flesh, if you like, till I got my first one. But I'd seen stuff on TV. There used to be a TV program called 6-5 Special, and another one called Oh Boy, that was on in the late 50s in Britain. And used to have people like Marty Wilde and Cliff Richard and films of Elvis and stuff. And I just loved the look of it. You know, like some blokes like motorbikes?
Yeah.
I just loved what drum kits looked like before I even thought about playing one.
So it was like love at first sight.
I don't say what it was. It was something to do with all the, the shiny bits and, and the noise you could make.
What about your musical instruments and your musical interests and your musical roots? Were they related to the type of music that you would later play in Lindisfarne?
Not really. I mean, it was just the pop music of the day when I was little. But around about the same time, as I'm telling you about that stuff, a cousin of mine lived over the road. Well, two or three cousins, all girls. And this particular one was about 3 years older than me. So when I was about 11, she'd be, 14-ish, 15-ish, getting interested in boys. And I used to be used as the driving partner when she practiced before she went to parties and dances. Mm-hmm. And then I watched some TV with her, watching, how they reacted to musicians and singers and stuff. And I think that's what got me interested. Watching the teenage girls' reactions to when I watched it. I thought this is a good way to get myself in with the women.
Tell us about the formation of Lindisfarne. Did you have a formula for the sound that you wanted there? Not
so much a formula. We knew what we didn't like more than what we liked, Mm-hmm. And when we were just a little local regional band, we always try to do things a bit different. So we took in interests and influences from stuff that we thought was different. So, but by the time we'd been going a few years, we were writing a few songs of our own, but we're also covering a lot of folk blues stuff, a lot of Chicago blues. So there's a lot of Muddy Waters, a lot of some bits of Woody Guthrie, but we're also covering some Zappa songs and things like that, So it was a bit left field.
It was rather diverse, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel lucky that the band came about it during the era that it did? How do you think a band like Lindisfarne would go trying to break through nowadays?
Oh, I think it would be almost impossible. I mean, well, in some ways now, it's easier because people are more interested in acoustic music than they were then. Mm-hmm. Because we just got lumbered under the folk banner, which was instantly untrendy and unhip in the late 60s, early 70s. But that was because we used acoustic instruments. Yeah. But I mean, so did the Beatles, but nobody bothered about that. But the one benefit in those days was you had the time to develop, which is very different these days with young bands coming along. The record companies these days, by and large, they expect success very quickly, and if they don't get it, you're dumped.
Yeah.
We had the luxury of being able to develop in public, if you like.
Yep. A lot of the live recordings of the band really generate a good time feel, almost a party-like atmosphere. I gather that was important to you guys to maintain that fun element all the way through?
Well, again, it goes with the territory. I mean, although quite a lot of the subject matter of our songs was quite serious, with a serious message, when it comes to putting a gig on, we were aware that people came out for a night out and we were entertainers, so we wanted them to go home with a smile on their face. So we would never hide the fact that we enjoyed playing live, and we would never try and stop the audience from getting involved. If they wanted to jump up on the seats and dance and sing and join the choruses, well, that was fine by us. And I suppose there was a time when we sort of actively encouraged it.
Yeah.
But I mean, show me a band that doesn't, unless you want to do the pro-faced approach, and pretend that you do rather you were somewhere else. I mean, that was never us.
Yeah. When did the band really peak for you and become the band that you wanted it to be?
That's a very good question. I think we did it 3 times, actually. Yeah. Well, there was the early days, the very early 70s when we had the very big success, nationally and internationally.
Yeah.
And then the band split for a bit, and we came back again in the late 70s when we had a bit more control of our own destiny, if you like. We were managing ourselves then and whatnot, and we came back with a Run for Home single and a big album, and that felt really good because well, because we were sort of doing it on our terms then.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third time, after Alan Holt died in '95, we decided to keep the band going regardless. And within about 3 years of sort of struggling a bit, to be honest with you, we'd put a couple of albums out, sort of like 99-ish and 2002-ish, which didn't sell huge amounts, but got really good reviews and proved to us that there was still life after Alan, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there was sort of 3 ages of the band, if you like.
Yeah. There are pivotal moments in a band's lifespan, and one of those is always when you first hear one of your records on the radio. Do you remember that moment for you?
I remember it very well, yeah. We were driving somewhere, and we were all travelling in one little van with a gear in the back, you know, and we came on some radio program, and we pulled into the side of the road and turned it up as loud as we could and jumped up and down. I remember it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It's I mean, you get very blasé about that sort of stuff after a while, but the first time it happens is amazing.
Yeah, it's one you never forget. How did the recording deal, your original recording deal with Charisma, come about?
It was a bit convoluted. We'd done a few tests for various people, sent stuff off, but as is usually the case when you're a bit different, people don't know quite what to make of you. And we were sort of coming through with the sort of the main thing in British music when we were coming through was sort of like the first heavy metal boom, you know, with Deep Purple and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we were obviously a million miles away from that, so people didn't know quite what to make of us. But what happened was, a band up here who had the same manager as us, one of their members went off to join a band called Jackson Heights, which was started by a guy called Lee Jackson, who had been in the Nice, a band called the Nice Progressive Band.
Yep.
And never want to sort of pass up an opportunity, our manager went up to London to talk to the record company to see if he could get some sort of compensation because he'd lost his guitar player for his band. And while he was there, he took down some tapes of us. And I think really to fob him off more than anything else, Tony Stratton-Smith said, well, you know, I quite like the sound of them. I'll give them a gig at the Marquee, because they had the Marquee Club in London. He had a weekly night, Charisma Night. So we went down and supported somebody a fortnight later, and he really liked it. And he offered us a deal. But round about the same time, we'd actually been we did an audition for George Martin's company.
Mm-hmm.
Went at Abbey Road and did something, and they offered us a deal at the same time. So, but we liked the Charisma setup, so we went with them.
Now, you mentioned earlier the chart hits that you had in those early days, and songs such as Meet Me on the Corner and Lady Eleanor. Were you prepared for that kind of success?
I think we were sort of prepared for the success, but not what came with it. I mean, we always had a sort of arrogance. I mean, we knew we were good. I mean, first of all, we knew we were the best band in Tyne, our little town. Then we knew we were the best band in Newcastle, and then we thought we were the best band in the northeast. And then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it went on like that. So we had this sort of because we were gigging around a lot and seeing lots of other people and supporting just about anybody that came to the northeast of England. We would get the support slot. So we saw these bands, you know,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of them were good, but a lot of them weren't that good. And we always felt that we had something really original. The more things you saw, the more perspective you got on the whole scene. So we gradually realised how good we were, and didn't have that much. There wasn't that much surprise when we started getting successful. But then when the records started happening, suddenly that catapults you into another sort of world altogether. And you know, when Fog in the Tyne was at its peak, because that was a huge selling record in this country.
Yeah.
It was the second biggest selling album of the year. You know, it's only Bridge Over Troubled Water sold more. We were suddenly put into this position where everybody knew us, not just people who bought the records. That, you know, we'd see on Top of the Pops, and everybody really knew you. You know, and it was a bit weird. And we didn't sit comfortably with that, because we always have, you know, our heroes were Dylan and the band and Leonard Cohen and, you know, people like that.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing we wanted to do. We didn't want to be T-Rex.
Were those songs recorded with hit single success in mind, or did that surprise you when that came?
Well, we knew there were catchy songs. We knew people, you know, I don't think at the time any of our songs at the time were longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, we were sort of making records in the style that the Beatles had 5 years earlier, in terms of, you know, catchy songs would say something, and get a hold of you quick. That was what we liked. I mean, some of the songs were a bit longer than that, but at least half of what we did was fairly instant, you know. So we weren't that surprised. It was, but we weren't. I mean, when we put finished the first album, the Nicely Out of Tune album, we had like 4 or 5 choices for the first single, and I think, I mean, it's been joked about before, but I think the 5 songs were put in a bag and we pulled one out. You know, and that's why Clear I Light was the first release.
Yeah. When the band split in two that first time, and some of you went on to form Jack the Lad, what was it that triggered that off?
Well, really, it was because of the huge success of Fog on the Tyne. When the next album came around, because we were managed by the record company, you see, that we were a bit naive. We didn't understand what was going on. We were the only band making money at the time for the label, and obviously they were very keen to get another album out as quick as they could, so they could, you know, fund their other things. And we were pushing to making it too quickly, and also we weren't actually prepared for the fact that whatever we did after Fog on the Tyne was going to appear to be a failure, because you couldn't get that successful again. Mm-hmm. It was highly unlikely, you know, because the album was number 1 for 12 weeks and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So we started. Alan was uncomfortable about the amount of this time we had to make the record, and he was feeling a bit uncomfortable about living in London, and he was cut off from his inspirations, if you like. Some of the rest of us in the band, I was one of them. I wanted to tour more because I thought that was the answer. But I was single at the time, you know, no hang-ups. Anyway, cut a long story short, we agreed to disagree and thought, well, let's just knock it on the head and start again. So we split into two. You know? And originally Alan was going to do his own thing, because he had his Pipe Dream solo album was out by then, and he was going to have his own band and do it his own way. But the record company didn't want to lose the main chance, so they talked him into reforming another version of Lindisfarne, which he did.
Did you remain a fan of what the guys in the new Lindisfarne were doing?
I did, personally. I mean, I used to go and see them, and they used to come see us. I mean, there was a big, you know, lots of people reckoned we never spoke, but, you know, I think we were upset with each other for about a fortnight,
yeah,
you know, because of the way things happened. And then it was back to normal because we had the same circle of friends, so you couldn't avoid each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And we started turning up at each other's gigs and all the rest of it. And obviously there's a bit of healthy competition between us, but nothing more than that. And I used to go and see them, yeah, and I really liked what they did, but I think they made a mistake by calling the band what they did. You know, if it had been Alan Hull's Pipe Dream, they would have had a lot more success because they wouldn't have had to try and, you know, they weren't the right sort of players to play that, what we'd done before.
Yeah, yeah.
They were a bit more sophisticated players than we were.
What was the initial plan for Jack the Lad? What did you want to do there differently to what you'd done with Lindisfarne?
We just wanted to get out there and be like the spirit of the original Lindisfarne. Everybody pitch the songs in, get out there and gig, you know. And I, you know, I still think the first Jack the Lad album was really, really good. I occasionally play it, but there's some good songs on there. In fact, it's interesting if you look at the first Lindisfarne Mark II album and the Jack the Lad album and Pipe Dream, and if you take the best songs, the fourth Lindisfarne album would have been a belter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
if those songs had ended up being on Lindisfarne number 4. But there you go. Yeah. I mean, you know, when all that happened, I mean, Genesis were on our label as well, early days, and they watched what happened to us, and they were up to their, I think, their 5th or 6th album, and they still hadn't made any money. They were in this huge financial hole, and they saw what happened to us, and they hired a big deal American music lawyer and marched into the office about a month after we'd split and said, right, we want a year off, we want this much money, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. After that, forget it, we're off. You know? And they got exactly what they'd asked for, but we were a bit naive and didn't realise we could have done that, you know?
There's definitely, I guess, a more traditional feel to the music of Jack the Lad, though, compared to Lindisfarne. Was that something you felt a need to do to get back to the roots, so to speak?
Yeah, we did. We did it. We felt we needed just a bit of a direction because the first album, good as it was a bit disparate. It was a bit like a sampler. You know, there were songs in all different sort of styles. And we had been getting a bit more into some of the rootsy music from up here. Sort of second-hand, if you like. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, our upbringing was rock and roll music, you know, Elvis, Buddy Holly, and then through that to the Beatles and Dylan and Tamla Moore, all that stuff. And so the roots music of our own area, we got into sort of second-hand way when you know, we suddenly found out that some of Dylan's songs were based on melodies of songs from from Scotland and stuff, and went background that way. So that was a conscious thing. Yeah, we deliberately did that just as a project, really. You know, just to sort of give the band some, a project to aim at, really.
Yeah. And then when you all got back together again under the Lindisfarne banner later on in the 70s, was there anything you vowed to do differently that time around? You mentioned earlier you had greater control. Was that one thing that you really...
Yeah, that was the most important thing, yeah. We hired a manager but he did what we wanted him to do. You know what I mean? We basically had meetings, and everything was discussed. Everybody was involved. We formed our own company. It was always scary at the time, you know, but it seemed like we were a little bit big for our boots, I suppose, in some ways. But we soon got comfortable with it and realised that it gives us a lot more autonomy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And did it that way. I'm glad we did, because, I mean, you know, there was a barren patch through the 80s when we didn't sell many records, but because we had our touring hat on, and it was all so slick and also well put together in terms of the mechanics of it, we managed to make a reasonable living just gigging.
Do you think in hindsight that break was something you had to have have the band go on for as long as it did in the end?
Yeah, I think we did. I think if we'd kept going at the original incarnation, I think we probably would have done very well and probably made a lot of money for a couple of years. We probably wouldn't have spoken to each other again after that, you know. I think because it wasn't the right way to do it.
So in a way, it was probably a blessing in disguise.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got no regrets about anything that happened to the band over the years. You know, I think everything has a reason, and we also, like you say, you react to things, don't you, and you respond to things, and it makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm. During the 80s and 90s, there were quite a few lineup changes that shuffled around quite a bit. But you still ploughed on regardless. It wasn't unsettling at any stage?
No, because what happened was, you see, it was whenever we've never auditioned anyone ever in the band. All the years the band was going, there was never an audition. If somebody decided that they wanted to do something else for whatever reason, there was always somebody in our circle of friends, in our close circle of musical mates, that was right for the job. You know, that we thought would be interesting as well. You know, like for instance, when Rod Clements he always played guitar on his own songs when we recorded them, but he was the bass player in the band on stage. And we had a little part-time band we used to have some fun with when Lindisfarne wasn't touring it, and Rod played slide guitar in that, and he was a great slide player. And we thought, you know, why not bring this element into Lindisfarne? So we needed a bass player. Well, there was a guy, a really good lad we used to play with locally, and some other things, and he perfect, you know, a lovely player, lovely personality, just slid straight in there, big Stevie Cunningham, you know, without a problem, and there was always someone like that. So it didn't seem, we took those things on as positives, you know.
Mm. Now, of course, Alan Hull's passing would have been obviously a great blow to the band. Were there thoughts at that stage to just put the band to bed?
Yeah, but not for long. I mean, we actually convened a sort of like an emergency meeting the day after he died. A bit, you know, when you have that sort of bereavement, you need to gather together, you know, families do it, and we just got together at Rob's house and sat. Well, I think we were in a state of shock, to be honest with you. And we decided more or less immediately that we wanted to keep going, because we thought, well, what would be the point of stopping? I mean, albeit it was an experimental thing, because we didn't know how the audiences would take to us. You know, we didn't know if they'd accept it. Mm. But we decided to have a go, because we thought, well, we've got all this fantastic material. This is what we do. We're players. You know, what's the point in going off and forming new bands when we've got one that works? Yeah. You know, all we need to do is to draft somebody in to stand in that place and sing those songs. You know, sing that part of the harmony. And we knew exactly who it would be, because he'd been going to be in the band once before, you know?
Yeah.
So, and the first year or so, it was, I think we were a bit shell-shocked and a bit tentative, and people were coming along to the gigs really just to see what would happen. I mean, some people I know I've spoken to, they never came to see us again when Alan died. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't face it. But a lot of people came along sort of quite with an open mind, you know, and then went away happy, you know, and thought, oh, right, well, you know, it's another twist in the tail, you know, we'll see what happens next. And I think after about 2 years of basically just playing existing material, we thought, well, you know, let's dip our toe in the water. So we went off to Scotland and recorded a little 4 or 5 track EP, and liked the way it sounded, and liked the, you know, and put that out and got good reactions. So then we went, right, let's start writing for an album, you know, and it was good. It was interesting, and it was never to try, you know, we could never equal Holly's input.
Yeah.
You know, Alan was such an incredible writer, an incredible person. You know, we didn't try to replace him. We didn't try to compete with him. We just thought, you know, we've got talent within the band now as it exists, so let's do the best we can with what we've got.
I believe there's a special tribute night to Alan coming up soon.
Yeah, yes, that's it's almost 10 years to the day anniversary of his death. It's on the 19th of November at Newcastle City Hall, which it couldn't be anywhere else.
Of course.
And just about everyone who's ever been in the band is coming back for that one night, and we're doing probably going to be about a 3.5 hour show, I would have thought. and we've got about 3 or 4 different bands and different people singing different songs, and some actor friends of ours and some other musicians and people who've, people that Alan managed, and the whole shooting match really.
Fantastic.
And we're going to record and video the whole thing.
Tremendous. It's talking about special gigs. Obviously, the final gig in 2003 must have been a magic night too.
It was a great night. But I mean, it was actually, it was a bit of an emergency stop, if you know what I mean. I mean, we only decided that it was going to be the last gig about 2.5 weeks before it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we decided in mid-tour. There'd been things happening. You get to a point in a band where a band is a sort of a gang, and it's a young man's thing in lots of ways. And by now, Rod had become the main writer. Rod Clements had become the main writer and was doing a very good job of it. But he was also wanting to do his own thing. He'd always had this romantic notion of, him with a guitar over his back, of doing what he touring around, playing where he ended up, and which is what he's doing now, and he's loving it. And I think he felt too much responsibility having to provide material for the band and also to be able to do his own thing. And he said he was considering knocking it on the head. And then a couple of other things happened, which sort of brought things to a head. So we sat down one night after a show and said, right, okay, it's obviously not nobody's heart's really in it anymore. We've done it and we've done really well. Let's not compromise. So let's knock it on the head at the end of the tour. So that's what we did. So we hastily got together the recording and the film unit and everything, and drafted in about another 40 minutes worth of tunes on top of the 2 hours we were doing, and recorded the whole thing. And it was highly charged emotional evening. But I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we didn't decide to pack in and then do a farewell show 3 months later or something like that.
Yeah.
It would have been strange.
Yeah. Now, away from music, you've had some involvement in production with film and television. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm doing that now. Yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years now. 5 or 6 years. In the past, whenever Lindisfarne have had a TV thing to do, whether it was a promo for one song or a special or a documentary or whatever, it was always me that was sort of the band's representative, if you like. A, because they couldn't be bothered, and B, because I was interested.
Yeah.
And so in actual fact, there were quite a few of the things we did I produced early on, although I didn't actually get that title and didn't realise that's what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was just making it happen. And, liaising with the production company or whatever it may be. And I've got a very good friend, a guy called Jeff Wanfall, who did all of the early Lindisfarne stuff. He's the same age as me. And me and him used to sit up all night in the BBC in Newcastle, cutting films together, that we'd done that day, and making sure, so they went out on the next day's news programmes, that sort of stuff. And he asked me to get involved with him about 1999. 2000 to get involved with them in a couple of things, and it just mushroomed from there. So I'm working with them more or less full time now.
Fantastic.
Pardon?
Working on any particular projects at the moment?
We've got a couple. We've got a couple of nice ideas. Well, they're not our ideas necessarily. I mean, sometimes we get asked to come in and do something. We do regional things and national things. I mean, the biggest thing we've done nationally, internationally, we did a TV biography of Stella McCartney.
Oh yeah.
And we've been working recently. We worked on the Live 8 thing. We worked on the Band 8 Band 8 20. We did the documentaries about that.
Uh-huh.
We've done a couple of. Do you know who Jules Holland is down there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how popular he is. Well, we did one of his live shows at the Royal Albert Hall recently.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a couple of natural history things. We've done all sorts of stuff. And the thing we've just done most recently, there's a thing up here called the Tall Ships Race that happens every 10 or 15 years. Sailing ships do this race around Europe and Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a big, and they basically have 3 or 4 ports to come into for 4 or 5 days. Well, this huge flotilla of over 100 ships come into Tyneside for a week. And we've made a film about that, which was a really exciting thing to do, and that's just come out on DVD locally. So we don't just do, network stuff, we do whatever takes our fancy and people want us to do.
So that's your main focus now? You think your days as a touring musician are pretty much over?
I do bits and pieces. I mean, we did something the other day. Are you aware who Paul Gascoigne is?
You're going to have to prompt me there. The name rings a bell.
Gazza. Well, he's a football player. He played for England and he's a soccer player,
Okay, yep.
Basically, there's a big charitable organisation in Britain called the Variety Club of Great Britain, which is a showbiz charity, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And the Northern region occasionally put these tribute lunches on. They had one for Sting in the summer, and they've had them for actors and whatever, you know. Anyway, they had one for Paul Gascoigne on Friday, and half a dozen of us who used to be in the band got together for the day because we were his favourite band, and did 4 or 5 songs at the event. So I was playing on Friday, which was really good fun.
Fantastic.
And I'll be doing the Alan's tribute thing, and that'll be good fun. But I can't see myself being a full-time player again.
No.
Drum kits are getting too heavy.
And just to finish up, Ray, how would you like to see Lindisfarne remembered?
Oh, I don't know. We were all things to all men. I mean, I think as a songwriting band, I think basically, you know, I think the strength of the band was in the songwriting and in our relationship with our audience. I once heard a thing Bruce Springsteen said, right, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I wish I'd thought of it. Somebody asked him at the end of a gig, this is years ago, and he'd been on the stage for about 3.5 hours. You know, so why do you do it? You know, most bands do an hour. You know, why do you put so much into it? And he says, well, it's simple. He said, every gig I do, there's going to be somebody seeing me for the first time and somebody seeing me for the last time, and I want them to get the best. And I think in our own small way, we try to do that as well. We always try to give people quality, always try to give them value for money, always try to send them home, you know, with lots of good ideas in their head. And that's basically what it was about for us.
Fantastic. Ray, thanks so much for your time. It's been a treat to catch up with you.
Well, you're more than welcome. It's a privilege, actually, to think that people down there still know about us.
Oh.
So we had some good times down there.
Yeah, I know. You've never forgotten, that's for sure.
Smashing.
Congratulations on a great career with one of England's most loved bands, and good luck with the tribute night coming up shortly. We'll look out for the CD and DVD release of those.
Thank you very much.
All the best, Ray.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.